A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place. One that visited islands of the Caribbean and included some notable historic volcanoes. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History. It's a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada. I once marveled at the wonder of Montserrat as it was eternally spraying ash. And then there was Mount Pelée, looming everywhere and in every horizon as one walked through the almost Parisian streets of Fort-de-France, Martinique. Both have dark histories. This is what happened at Mount Pelée this day in weather history. For today's story, we go all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century, when the year was 1902. It was on April 2nd of that year when new steam vents were suddenly spotted on the peak. It's overlooking the port city of Saint Pierre. If you port there today, Saint Pierre is awash in Mercedes-Benz cab drivers who all hate you, and everyone is ducking and dodging one of the busiest banana export industries in the world. From Saint Pierre, you have a clean line of sight to the top of this majestic mountain. Back in 1902, and 3 weeks later into our story, tremors were felt and Mount Pelée belched up a cloud of ash. That had to cause a stir, surely. Sadly and tragically, no, it did not. Residents of the port city were too wrapped up and all of their attention was being paid to what must have been a pretty engaging election for them to not heed the mountain's warnings to evacuate. Now, I will grant them this. They were on a normally tranquil island, and it's also 1902, so there's no tech, there's no internet. They are totally isolated from most of the world, save for maybe France, so they likely did not see that educational film on what a volcano eruption can do to the land around it, because the nearby residents misguidedly believed that the only danger from the volcano was lava flow. That in itself would have had me running. And from what they recall, I don't know where they saw this or where they got this misinformation. They reckoned because the lava moves so slowly, they could easily just outwalk it. They were so convinced that there was no danger, some people actually wanted to get closer and proceeded to actually come outside to view the action. And it didn't even matter that there was already enough ash buildup from the eruption that it was now already blocking roads. What happened next had to have been a true eye-opening moment for everyone on that island. Remember that this day in weather history can be enjoyed a number of ways. Right now, you are listening to the full version of today's story on your favorite podcast provider, but there is also the daily podcast video short. They are shot right here in my podcast recording studio, so you get that perspective, and oftentimes they will include visuals from that day's event, from when it happened, in weather history. So after listening to the full story, go check out the podcast video short on television or online anytime at theweathernetwork.com/weather history. Overnight into the next day, the violent activity on the volcano increased incrementally, and the blasts grew significantly stronger one after the other. There were several strong tremors that shook everything, and then a mighty cloud of ash blasted from the top of the mountain with a temperature of more than 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 1,650 degrees Celsius. Finally, a tremendous blast in the early morning hours sent an avalanche of boiling ash down the side of the mountain. On May 7th, 1902, this day in weather history, Martinique's Mount Pelée began the deadliest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. Turns out, this was far, 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 far more serious than they thought. And this would likely go on to interrupt anything else going on everywhere on the island very soon. And when it hit hard. The following day, the city of Saint Pierre, which I can attest to, lives up to its billing as the Paris of the Caribbean, was wiped off the map. The city of Saint Pierre was buried within minutes, and most of their entire population died instantly. And by most, I mean only 2 people in all of the city of Saint Pierre on the cusp of what was an important election. Remember that part? Only 2 people survived. And of those 2, one was a prisoner who had been held in an underground cell. And there were 16 ships in the harbor that for some unknown reason were still there when the volcano erupted. That was a regretful miscalculation because all of them were blown away by the eruption and only 1 ship survived. But even at that, only half of that 1 ship's crew survived, and of that, all suffered serious burns. This day in weather history. Tomorrow is May 8th, and we're talking about what was called in 2009 a super derecho. I'll explain first what a derecho is and what it did tomorrow on this podcast. This Day in Weather History with me, your host, Chris May.